Mighty. You show up with two 10-pound dumbbells like these. What are you thinking? Working on mighty, working on strengthening. You know, they say you got to have a solid core. You got to, if you're going to be a priest and hold your arms out like this with vestments on, you got to have worked out with this. Do I have a volunteer that'll help me with these? Anybody want to come and show this off? Last night I had 2 second graders help me out. All right, come on up. There we got one hand. Come on up. Who's the second person that wants to come up and help? All right, come on up too, young lady. There we go. Come on up. Here we go. So we're looking at mighty, mighty, mighty. You can hold this, right? Okay, put it in 2 hands. There you go. And you can do this one, I would bet. There you go. It's not that heavy. Come on, right up here on the step so we can see you. Okay, step up on the step, 2 hands, and go like this. Okay, up and down, up and down. Mighty, mighty. These are going to look strong. How long do you think you can keep doing that before it becomes misery? I would bet those of you that have gone through any kind of therapy, I had a brother that tore the muscle off his rotator cuff, extensive surgery, and then when finally he got into the rehab, 2-pound weight was torture. Misery, misery. I bet you've been in therapy doing weight. Keep going like this. You approach misery. They're not in misery, but you can imagine that sense of misery in life. And so as they're doing this, we want to take this and look at our gospel today. We encounter the woman caught in adultery. Certainly, there can be a lot of judgment on that woman, but you got to understand, in ancient culture, women couldn't own land, they couldn't hold a job. So if she wasn't connected to her father or her husband, was kind of dumped out there on her own, was the only kind of work she could get was prostitution. Today, we recognize or in that time, certainly recognize that perhaps it wasn't so much that it was her fault, it was she was in a life of misery and was in need of taking care of herself, and that could have been the only way to do that. Today, we might call that human trafficking, happening again today to people in our world, and caught in that misery. How's our weightlifting going? Are we approaching misery? Yes, okay, very good. Not really, okay. But we want that sense of that woman caught in adultery, perhaps is that sense of misery in her life, certainly as she stands there and is about to be stoned. So we recognize as that one scene in the gospel. The second scene in the gospel I want us to look at are the people standing around holding those stones, getting ready to stone her, because that's what you do according to this law. That's what life is. Carrying this stone, perhaps equal to 10 pounds. It's getting heavy, isn't it? No, not at all. You can handle it. Okay, good. Getting heavy for you? No, okay. But you're no longer doing this. Oh, okay. Moving the weights up and down. But for those people that were about ready to stone, what did they do with their stones? Gospel really doesn't say they set them down. So let's imagine that they took them home with them and are still carrying them today. What about us in our lives? Are there times that, like the woman caught in adultery, that we have sinned and we carry that misery of that weight? Are there times that we are the ones accusing, carrying the stones, and continue to carry them in our lives? And the third scene is Jesus Christ. He too is caught between a rock and a hard spot. A rock and a hard spot. You've been there? It's a lose-lose. There's 2 options, and neither of them are good. For him, option number 1 is, as a Jewish scholar of the law, as a teacher of the law, you have to teach the law and follow the law. The law says, woman caught in adultery, stoned to death. So if he goes against the law, he is no Jewish rabbi. He is no Jewish teacher. If he goes against the laws and said, don't stone her. If he says stone her, he's following the Jewish law, but the Roman law doesn't allow a Jew to put anyone to death. So that would get him in trouble with the Romans. And the Romans, they had very little sympathy, very little empathy. They would just instantly execute him, put him to death. So he's really caught between a rock and a hard spot. Have you ever been there? 2 options before you. Neither of the options good. The rock and the hard spots. So as we look at these options, as we look at, oh man, we're getting tired of this, aren't we? Wondering, why did we say yes? We're entering the misery stage, I'm thinking here. We're looking very much like misery at this point, but in lifting our weights. But as we realize that, perhaps we look in our own lives and say, what is the misery that we are caught in? What is the 10 pounds that we carry? Maybe it's about sin, standing there with the woman caught in adultery, and some sin that we've not brought to our Lord and sought forgiveness, sought the sacrament of reconciliation, sought that loving forgiveness, that mercy of our Father. Maybe it's standing there holding the stones in our life, holding the stones of that we might hold as we hold a grudge, or we hold anger or righteousness, holding on to that and carrying around in our lives. Carrying around and holding on to 10 pounds is no fun, is it? No, not at all. You're hoping this is going to be done pretty soon, aren't you? I'll bet you're not going to be back here tonight to help with my homily again, are you? No, this is too much work. But isn't that whatever we carry as that weight in our lives also too much work? Or perhaps we find ourselves in the middle of a decision between a rock and a hard spot. Until all these, we want to move from that misery to that mercy. So we see in the gospel when Jesus asks what you do, he kneels down and he writes in the ground, in the sand. Could that ground, could that sand represent our hearts? Hearts not of stone or of weight that is immovable and solid, but a heart that is soft and can imprint and receive the mercy and the love of God, and therefore have that ability to receive mercy in life and to go forward in life. So I want us everybody to hold out your hand like you're holding the 10-pound stone, 10-pound weights, and you've gone from being mighty with this to misery. And now we're going to invite you into mercy. To name that stone of misery, if it's the lack of forgiveness or judgment, if it's a grudge, if it's anger, it's a resentment, whatever it is in life, to be able to name that today and to move towards mercy by setting it down in life. By opening our soft, writable hearts to receive Jesus' mercy and love and to be set free. So I'm going to invite you, and I'm going to invite our weightlifters. Turn and you can go put the weight before the altar. Put it on the floor in front of the altar. As they do that, invite you to do the same, to let that weight go and to fold your hands in prayer, seeking God's mercy in your life.